Hey guys, so today we are going to be talking about writing characters and how to get your characters in your writing really fleshed out, really realistic, and really lifelike. So let's jump right on into it. I find that when I'm reading a book, the characters make or break the book. A good book with a good plot line but flat characters really has very little to recommend it. You can't really save much in a book if your characters are flat. As a reader, I can't relate to them, so when I am reading a book, I need a book with good characters. If your characters are unlifelike and unrealistic, no one is going to be able to connect with them. That being said, it's really easy to sit there as a reader and critique a book and say, these characters are really flat, I don't like them, they're really hard to relate to and really annoying. It's a lot harder to sit there as a writer and say, I am going to write realistic characters. So today we're going to be talking about a few of my personal tips and strategies for new writers to really flesh out your characters and get your characters realistic and lifelike. So step one to writing a real character is naming your character. Name them, name them, name them. I can't say this enough, guys. It's really important to name your characters. Now this is because if you are planning your plotline before you name your character, and I've done this before, you'll say things like, the protagonist does this, the main character does that, or MC does that. That stops you from really getting into the head of your character. By the time you start writing, you only know them as the main character or the protagonist, and that doesn't work. If you only know your main character as a main character and not as a person, you are not going to be able to write a real lifelike person. It's mostly for you as a writer to get into the mindset of your character before you even start plotlining, before you start writing about your character. It helps to know who your character is. And naming, just putting a name to the invisible face in your mind really, really helps with that. So how do you name your characters? My saving grace for character names are baby name websites. The baby name websites are phenomenal for this. You can sort the names by what the first letter is, or how many syllables it has. If you have an ethnicity you want your character to be, or a family genealogy that you want to include in your character's profile. Maybe you want the character's name to have a hidden meaning, like J.K. Rowling did with a lot of her characters. You can find everything like that on a baby name website. So for example, my current book right now is based off of a fictional island right off of the Norwegian coast. So I knew that I wanted my main character to be something Norwegian. I also knew that I wanted her name to be something strong and powerful. So I went to a baby name generator website. I'll put the link in the description down below because this is one of my favorite websites. I'll also run it across right here somewhere. And this website immediately gave me exactly what I wanted. Now that's probably because the name started with an A, so I didn't have to sort through A, B, C, D, E, F, G, the entire alphabet of names to find the one I wanted. Astrid is of Scandinavian background, and it means hidden divine power and strength, and I knew that that was what I wanted for my character name. It fit perfectly. So again, name your characters. Even if it's just a first name, even if it's just a temporary name, name your characters before you even start plotting their background. And again, this is just one little technique that I like to use. Google is your best friend for looking up names, for baby names, for last names. And I'll put some of my favorite baby name generator websites linked in the description down below, but again, Google. Google helps, Google works, whatever you want. The most important thing is that you name your characters. It can be a completely temporary name. In one of my favorite books ever, Eragon, I was watching an interview with Christopher Paolini, and he said that his first draft character was named Kevin. Now, of course, he's named Eragon, and he's the main character of a series of 4 phenomenal books. But again, he was able to write those first draft because he had a character named Kevin, and he had a name. And that allowed him to get into the mindset of his character and put a personality to the name, to the face. So again, name your characters, guys. It really, really helps. That is step 1 in getting a really well fleshed out character. Alright, so step 2. Step 2 is what I like to call a word vomit biography. I don't really have a better name for it. That's just sort of what I call it in my mind, and that's really what it is. You'll see in a second. So a word vomit biography is essentially when you have your character, you have the name, you have some ideas in your mind of who they are. But the best way to get those ideas on the page and really flesh them out is word vomiting. Now, word vomiting is essentially free writing. You just put your pencil to the page and write and write and write until your brain runs out of ideas. So for each of my characters, once I have their name, I like to word vomit, and it's really messy. It is not supposed to be organized. You can see here, it is a lot of words, a lot of notes in the margins, a lot of doodles. This is not the step to be organized in your thoughts or your minds. You are really just trying to write everything down. Not only does writing things down scientifically help connect what you were writing to your memory so you remember it better, but it just gets them out there. You have them somewhere to refer back to, because I guarantee you will forget a lot of the details you write down in this. I have forgotten so many things, and it's so nice to just have this, again, word vomit biography to go back to. So for example, right here, for one of my characters, I have written down, Liv was born and raised on the island. Simple, to the point, but you know exactly what you are saying. There's very little artistic flair to it. There shouldn't be much artistic flair to this. You are just free writing. You are getting your ideas down on the page. This may not seem like a really important step, but it really, really, really is. If you want a really fleshed out character, if you want to know their tone of voice, how they speak, how they talk, how they would react to things, then you need to have these little ideas and little moments planned out. Because in the end, guys, we are made from our pasts, and so are your characters. Those little moments in the past that have shaped you, your characters should have so many of those. It doesn't matter if you're never going to use those moments or refer to them in your writing. If you know what that moment is, then you will be able to form your character's true personality, and your character as a person will become a lot more fleshed out. So this, again, word vomiting, just getting the ideas down on the page. You can analyze them and flesh them out later, but you want the little ideas on the page. So that is step 2 in planning out realistic, lifelike characters. So step 3 is the biggest step yet, and the most important step. Now this is really my surefire way to get in the mind of my character and to really be able to know them as a person. And you can do this in so many different ways. I'll talk about the different strategies, and I'll talk about what I do personally and what you guys can do differently if you want. Feel free to take this and to tweak it to fit your needs. But essentially, this step is what I call the interview. So the character interview is kind of like if you imagine yourself as an author sitting down across from your characters and talking to them. Now you can do this in your mind. If they seem like a person in your mind, they will come out onto paper like a person. So the character interviews, I usually create a document and I will ask the questions, and I will spend maybe an hour to 2 hours writing only 2 pages of questions and answers in this character's tone of voice. Now this is the most important step, because this is what connects all of the work you've been doing in your mind to look at the character as a person to portraying them on the page. This is that bridge that you're building between your mind and the page, and how seeing them as a real person can translate into showing them as a real person. It's good to have one question that you usually start out with. I like to ask all of my characters what their name means. Now this question I just really like because I feel like it really shows who the character is intellectually. If they're super intellectually curious, they'll have looked up the name, they'll have looked up all the different meanings, what the background is like, or if they're just super or maybe they're not very intellectually curious, maybe they don't really care about it, but they know what it means and that you can show it that way. Maybe they don't know, maybe they never bothered to look it up because it just never occurred to them or never interested them, and that's fine too. But then from there you can take that question and you can go a little deeper. You can talk about their family relationship. I usually try to incorporate a little bit of the drama, because every person really has something they don't really like to talk about in front of other people. And if you can flesh that out and figure out what it is that makes your character uncomfortable in conversation, then that's great too. How do they handle that uncomfortability? And then usually I round off the interview by asking the character to describe their physical appearance. Now again, this is great because not only does it write down somewhere what your character is supposed to look like, but it also shows how the character sees themselves. If the character says, yeah, well, I have honey brown hair and I have blue eyes with flecks of gray in them, and they're really proud of their appearance or they're really comfortable in their appearance, but maybe if they just sort of go, well, it's brown hair, it's blue eyes, yeah, let's move on, then you can tell that they don't really want to talk about their appearance. Maybe it makes them uncomfortable, maybe they have insecurities there, or maybe they just don't care about their appearance. So that last step, the character interview, that is really my surefire trick to getting in the heads of my characters, knowing how they speak, knowing how they react to things, what makes them uncomfortable in social situations, how they handle that. Are they outgoing? Do they use a lot of ums? How do they curse? Things like that. You can create the biggest backstory for your character, but in the end, it is the dialogue that is going to captivate your reader. And it is the dialogue that is going to show your reader who your character is. And that is why the character interview is so important to do before you start plotting your plotline. Because how are you going to know how your character is going to react to a certain situation if you don't know how they talk and how they act? How are you going to say, yeah, under pressure this person gets really nervous and stutters a lot, if you haven't already put them under pressure yourself as an author interviewing your character? Again, this is completely optional. You don't always have to do this. I'm sure some of the authors with the best fleshed out characters never once even touched on this strategy, but I find that it is definitely an easy 3-step solution to creating really realistic and lifelike characters that your readers can relate to and that you are going to actually love writing about, because it's so much more fun writing about real characters. It's just a lot more fun. As a writer, I get excited to write certain scenes because a certain character is in the scene and I love exploring their dialogue. Or I love writing how these two characters are going to interact, because while I have their interviews and I know their dialogue, it's going to be so exciting to see their interactions and how they mingle when you put them together on the same page. It's just things like that, things that make you excited to write, and if you're excited to write, that really translates into your reading. So, looping it all back, the main purpose of this video is to show you guys some of my surefire strategies to creating really deep and realistic and lifelike characters. And there are so many other strategies you can find out there online. But again, I find for me that I only need 3 steps to develop these really well fleshed out characters. Step 1, naming them. Step 2, a word vomit biography. And step 3, a character interview. And if you do those 3 steps, and if they work for you, you are ready to move on to plotlining and writing them. Again, these strategies don't work for everyone. If they do work for you, I would love to hear some feedback. Let me know what you think of my different strategies. Let me know what other strategies you might use to make your characters realistic. I am always open to trying new things, so hit me up in the comments down below, and I would love to hear how these strategies work for you guys. Thanks for coming out today. Again, hope you guys are all staying happy, healthy, safe. Please support each other. Please take care of each other. And I will see you guys on Saturday. Bye.